Here's a ridiculous thought. If a free energy device cannot be simulated using software that's online that can be used for free, creating a circuit design in that simulator that works, then what's the point of studying it? What's the point of even building it? If I don't have complete understanding of how the circuit works, such that I can't simulate it on a simulator. It's all about sophistication of the software. Is the software sophisticated enough that it has all the components in there, like bifilar pancake coils? Some of these items are exotic. You'd have to be very fancy schmancy simulator software, but if it's required in order to avoid the use of grounding rods, which is not simulated in anybody's, because they're all thinking of closed systems. Nobody thinks of an open system interacting with the environment. And I've been studying a little bit the geological survey method for studying the Earth, taking geological surveys of the Earth, and one in particular in which they use electrical devices to sound the Earth, so to speak. They don't tap it with a hammer, although they come close, because that is one way to do things, but they can do that electrically too. Tap it with a hammer, so to speak, an electrical hammer, and see how the Earth responds. Well, what do you think Barbosa and Leal is? It does something to the Earth, and the Earth responds. Just like if you had a component in a circuit, you do something to the component, and the component responds according to its characteristics. And thus it contributes to the modification of the overall circuit. Well, so it's just a question of understanding, how does the Earth contribute? What is the biggest factor? And in studying the matter, although the end result is electrical voltage that's created between the two sets of grounding rods, to do that, you have to create eddy currents in the Earth. For those eddy currents to interact with the Earth's eddy currents so that the Earth can contribute. Well, if you don't have the Earth to contribute, if the geomagnetic force is so zero that you've got to create your own eddy currents, then that's all it amounts to. You create your own eddy current strong enough to act as I can't say a parasitic oscillation, but as an oscillation, maybe a parasitic one, but as an oscillation that creates a positive feedback, so that the eddy current you create inside your device is something you can bank on as a source of free energy. And that's what I think the proper understanding of the grounding rods of Barbosa and Leal amount to, is a bank of eddy currents. Now there's a smaller eddy current that happens inside the electric keeper, but it's teeny. And that's the one that ultimately you want to feed and concentrate. But first you have to accumulate before you concentrate. And the accumulation, the whole point of it in the Earth, is to create a voltage difference between the two sets of grounding rods. It's not to access current, but to access voltage. So if the voltage has to be created by eddy currents, then I can see why Clarence Finn has gone to, in one of his variations on replacing grounding rods, he's gone to pancake coils. Now, I don't know how to use pancake coils the way he uses them. He uses them, I think, in all likelihood, very efficiently, because he only has a few. The only way for me to do it in any kind of logistically realistic manner is to have a lot of them, which means I'm not using them very efficiently. So I make up for lack of efficiency by quantity. But before I do it, I better be sure that's what I should do and how to do it before I set out on coiling numerous pancake coils stretching down the hall, if I have to have that many stacked in series to create a very large bank of eddy currents for my little tiny toy device to be able to put out a teensy amount of over-unity, then so be it. Efficiency comes with time, with the skill, then one baby step at a time to shrink down that humongous stack. But in theory, I should be able to simulate it on a electrical simulator. And they're all available online. It's just a question of finding one that gives me all the components I need. And, of course, me understanding how to use the simulator, too, because it might be in there and I don't understand. How do I create a pancake coil? So, But I think that's all it amounts to, is creating a simulator. I don't even have to build a Barbos and Leela device, because if I can't create a simulator, then there's no way I could convince anybody. Because, people say, oh, it's fraud, I'll see it, I'll believe it when I see it. And then you create the device, and everybody says, oh, and then what did happen to Bedini? A guy followed him home. He took it from a Tesla conference, and somebody else followed as well, who wasn't part of the deal. He just tailed along, and he arranged his buddy to call John, and John stepped aside from the person he went home with to show us something. 5 minutes, that's all it was, long enough for this other guy B, or guy A prime, to cut the wires on this thing. His Energizer, he spent, a long time building his prototype, and he was just like that was his baby. When his baby was destroyed, his heart was destroyed. He never bothered to fix it and rebuild a new prototype. Actually, no, it was a switching circuit. It was a Tesla switching circuit. That was it. Well, whatever it was, it was on one of his videos from the Energy from the Vacuum series. And the way he describes it, he describes it like his heart was broken, not just the machine. But all that guy had to do was cut all the wires and pull a few things out of the circuit board, and then go and hand it to John and say, "See, it doesn't work." While the first guy was there to be shown that it works. So maybe they were all in cahoots. Who knows? It doesn't matter, because it shows it's not that easy to destroy someone. So I'm thinking to myself, if I don't have a full understanding, I don't need to build a device. I need to just simulate it. But I have to understand it, and I have to understand the simulator to match the two, so that the simulator delivers. But I can't have expect a simulator to depend on the Earth. There's no way that's going to happen, because they'd have to program factors of the Earth, or I'd have to find a geologic survey method that is a simulator for surveying geology electrically. A simulator for doing that. And then wed those two simulator programs. So I'd have to spend some time programming if I want to be successful, and have other people use the simulator to show that it works. It delivers. So if you have a circuit connected to the Earth, interacting with it, the simulator does an accurate job of doing so, of simulating that interaction. But one way or another, either converting the grounding rods into a circuit substitute, such as bifilar pancake coils that are stacked, some kind of version of that, or whether or not two simulators have to be wed closed circuits who try to do everything themselves, and it's like it's usually a failure, because they're never designed that way. So I don't know if I'd ever find a simulator that would have bifilar pancake coils in them, even though bifilar pancake coils are very unique. They have a ton of resistors, diodes, a ton of different diodes, Zener diodes, Schottky diodes, regular diodes, this diodes, that diodes, capacitors. You've got electrolytic capacitors. You've got all these kinds of capacitors. So obviously, a series of grounding rods is kind of like an antenna system, but it's designed, in this case, for Barbosa and Leal, not to be an antenna, so to speak, because an antenna would be strictly electrostatic, but to be an antenna providing the formation of eddy currents, electromagnetic eddy currents within the Earth, that it then comes back and influences, a rebound upon the so-called Barbosa and Leal antenna or ground rod system in such a way that it produces a voltage difference between the two sets of rods. Now that's not the way Clarence said to measure the voltage, actually. Now that I recall, you have to measure the RMS voltage between the greater set of rods and the neutral, the fourth set of rods. So it is between the two sets of rods. That's what I thought. Yeah. So how do you create that voltage difference? You have to use electromagnetics to do it. And that's why you need a strong geomagnetic field, so that the eddy current you set up will stay there and won't dissipate. Because you're trying to manipulate the eddy currents of the Earth and turn them into your own eddy currents geared to 60 cycles per, alternation of current in the vicinity of the rods. That's why the rods have to be spaced so closely together. It's very interesting studying geological survey methods that use electrical techniques to survey the Earth. It's very provocative in getting me to think along the correct lines of reasoning of how would I substitute. Well, I would do the same thing Clarence did. I would get involved with efficient eddy currents, namely a pancake coil. That's an efficient eddy current, basically. And because the eddy currents are self-circulating, we've got ourselves another electric keeper. Only this one's in the Earth, and much bigger than what's in the device. So Barbosa and Leal avoided having to complicate the circuitry by going to the Earth as an input source. But the caveat to that is you're dependent on a strong magnetic contribution from the Earth in order for that interfacing to be successful. Otherwise, you've got to plant yourself a lot of grounding rods to make up the difference. I mean, there's always some magnetic field, but you know what? It's getting weaker and weaker with every year. Every decade, it keeps getting weaker because, the geomagnetic reversal hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. It's pretty obvious. It's been going on, this weakening of the Earth's magnetic field, since the 1800s when they first started measuring. So we don't know how long it's been going on for. At least that long, if not longer. And it always weakens before it reverses. And then it reverses when it reaches its nadir, wherever that is. And then it strengthens back up again, taking just as long, apparently, to strengthen as it did to weaken. But the switch happens at the weakest point. Well, that means we have to keep adding more grounding rods. And then there'll be a short period of time where the Barbosa and Leal device won't work at all. So you gotta think ahead, guys, you gotta think ahead and foresee these things. Well, Clarence is. That's why he came up with no less than 3 at last count. I think there was the pancake coil, there was it may not be 3. It may just be very complicated. It may involve both pancake coils and a solar panel. Wouldn't that be weird? Because you've got to have a component in your simulation that represents the rods themselves. And to do that might be why he turned to photovoltaic, not as a complete substitute, but as only one component, subsystem of the entire simulated substitution for the grounding rods in the Earth. So the pancake coils represents the Earth side of the equation, but the Barbosa and Leal circuit side of grounding rods might be represented or simulated by his photovoltaic panel interacting with a light bulb. This could be very interesting now that I think of it. Wow. Because you have to create a voltage difference between the two panels that's beefed up with something other than a mere light bulb, obviously. And so that would be the purpose of the pancake coils, is to amplify. You see, Barbosa and Leal's circuitry already charges up the two sets of grounding rods as it is, but it's in idle mode. If all you had was, say, 2 grounding rods, 1 per set, and the reason for increasing, like 56 grounding rods is to change the balance, not only of the mass between the two sets, but the surface area as well. And not only the surface area, but the spread, because you're creating a field of electrodynamics that serves as your fishnet of sorts to collect earth energy. See? It's the space between the rods what goes on. So, this is very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, he didn't have a tiny little... I bought myself a little solar panel, but it's a tiny little toy, You didn't see Clarence with... I didn't see Clarence with a little tiny toy. He had a big set of panels. Small enough to fit in a room, but it's like a piece of furniture. It takes up space. It's large enough to take up space like a piece of furniture would take up. A moderate-sized piece of furniture would take up a certain amount of floor space and the cubic space above it, all the way to the ceiling. So, if you don't mind, ooh, oh dear, we have a new piece of furniture. Ooh, I want that out of the house. No. Yeah, but it pays our electric bill for free. Oh, put it in the basement. We don't have a basement. Put it in the attic. We don't have an attic. Put it in the garage. Well, I won't be able to park in the garage. Oh my God. So that could be. It could be a necessary component. See, I thought I could use metal plates interspersed between the coils, the pancake coils. But what if that's the efficient way to do it? I see. So he's using the photovoltaic panel, the two sides of the photovoltaic panel. God, that's so hard for me to pronounce. The PV. The PV panel. That I can say. As a substitute for all the plates that would be between the series stack of bifilar coils, pancake coils. Apparently. Along with a few other tidbits, he had a lot of components which I don't understand the purpose of them, what function they serve. Apparently, he learned to integrate all these subsystems to create the entire simulator substitute, efficient substitute for a lack of plugging into the earth with grounding rods. So if I expect to do it with metal plates of one composition or another and bifilar pancake coils, it's going to be a lot of pancake coils, but it should work. I mean, in theory, in simplistic theory. It's going to take a lot of coils, though. But in a simulator, you can put in as many as you want, if that's all I'm trying to do. So that's not bad. I like that. It's simple, too. Something I can grapple with. What I'm currently working on is the diagrams. I finished them, actually, but now I have to do the text, to rework the text to reinsert these, because these are changes I'm making to other diagrams. And I understand now where I was going with the Schottky diode. It's not a diode, it's a Schottky capacitor, which doesn't exist, but try to find a simulator who has one, right? And only specifically for a DC version of a substitute for grounding rods would be a Schottky capacitor. But for the AC capacitor, and it's a PIN diode, the Schottky diode for a DC situation. I stands for interface conductor, I think it's called. And it's juxtaposed between the P and the N of a PN diode. Well, in an AC version, it becomes an NIN capacitor. Never heard of that component. Try to find that in a simulator. So why we don't have free energy in simulators? The very exotic components, custom made. I have to make my own simulator. And it'll have to be approved by all those critical minds out there. You can't have that. Why not? I just did it. In the case of the Schottky PIN capacitor, the P is represented by an aluminum plate. The I is represented by bifilar pancake coils, and the N is represented by iron plates, or ferromagnetizable plates, let's put it that way. So in the case of an NIN semi-Schottky capacitor, you drop the aluminum plate and all you've got are iron plates, but you still have the pancake coils. And the pancake coils are all connected in series, and then the last one on one end is connected to the other last one on the other end to create an electric keeper. Very long one and a very complicated one, but an electric keeper of its own kind. In the case of the PIN Schottky capacitor, the aluminum plate, the sole aluminum plate goes in the middle. And in the case of the NIN, the sole iron plate goes in the middle too, because that represents the 4 grounding rods, while all the other iron plates represent the 56 grounding rods, and they surround the middle plate on either side. They're all connected in series with each other. The larger set of the NIN, or the N set of the PIN, representing the 56 grounding rods connected in series. And so that connection goes to the captor return ground line, while the single plate in the middle goes to the neutral connection of the AC plug number 1 version, or of, coming out of the AC sine wave inverter of Clarence's successful replication of Barbosa and Leal, or in the DC version it goes to the middle iron plate goes to the middle aluminum plate of the DC version goes to the, what would have been the neutral becomes the positive lead coming out of plug number 1 of what amounts to a timer circuit, because the AC sine wave inverter is replaced with a timer circuit that times DC pulses. So that's the only way you can do a DC version of Barbosa and Leal, is it has to be pulsed. It cannot be continuous DC, because you still have to have those toroidal transformers, and the only way you're going to use them is to collapse the field. Well, one way to collapse it is with an AC reversal. The other way is with a DC collapse, a pulse, in which the only thing that matters, or the main thing that matters, is the duty cycle, the on portion of a DC pulse. So you can have whatever frequency of pulses you think is amenable to efficiency, but the other thing you have to think about is the duration of the pulse. So it gets a little complicated with a DC system, but it can be done. And so the timer chip that runs the pancake coils amidst their plates also is the same timer chip that feeds plug number 2, output from that timer chip, that runs the transformers, the two toroids, and the electric keeper between them. So everything is in phase with the same timer chip, and that timer chip is running off the 12-volt battery or whatever it is, a 9-volt battery, whatever it is, and the battery is run off a DC to DC inverter because you've got this huge voltage that's coming out of your system, right? That's what you foresee. So you've got to invert all of that. Actually, it's not the voltage you're inverting, it's the amperage. You've got all this amperage coming out of your system at the same regulated voltage that is regulated by the timer chip, putting out that voltage. But you've got all this extra amperage, which actually should go away if you take away your load. Then the electric keeper should die down. And that should help bring down the amperage within the earth, or the pancake coils. So it's a cascade effect that can build up or die off. And that's why I think Barbosa and Leal is a monopole, because the load becomes the other end of a dipole that regulates, the demand of the load regulates the supply coming from the rest of the circuit. So when the demand of the load goes up, the supply goes up to match. And you only have so much energy in the electric keeper to match your demand. But that also means you only have so much energy eddy currenting around in the earth to match the electric keeper in the device's circuit. So I don't know whether or not I'll succeed. Well, I do know I'll succeed. My intuition tells me I'll succeed. But in my own way. In my own way. Because there's no point in doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. I'm not that kind of person. I always try to do things a little differently to help progress things along, to help create some variety of perspective. And unless we can change perspective, we're not going to get more people on board with this. And I think a simulator is the way to go. But that is the way I'm going at the moment. And I'm enthusiastic about it. I think very highly of it, but I have to finish my diagrams and my text analysis so that I am fully equipped, that I have something that feels good. And then I have to go study simulators and maybe program my own simulator and have people test out all the new components that I have that other simulators don't possess. And if it meets with their approval, then my circuit will get the thumbs up. Otherwise, it ain't. Because, you can make a computer program simulate anything, and it could be fraud, it could be a fiction. It has to comply. Each component you have to be able to take each component out of my version of what I would want to draft of Barbosa and Leal and test it in another circuit, see? And this is what people, if I set up a web service in which people can use my simulator and all the components on the simulator to their satisfaction, then that tests all the components of that simulator and verifies scientifically by outside opinions that those components work, the custom-made ones. I mean, that they conform to electrical theory. Whatever we know about electrical theory. So I can't do anything outside the box, and I wouldn't want to. And that's probably why I chose Earth energy, because geological survey people know a lot about the Earth, in particular in this instance, the electrical component. And so there's got to be some way to program that into a simulator, either with grounding rods in that situation, or to find an analogous situation in a closed system of some sort of array of electrical components, or else Clarence wouldn't have succeeded in doing what he does in a highly efficient, complicated manner. I should be able to do it in a highly stupid, simple-minded manner that's very not efficient, but something my simple brain could understand, and somebody else who I'm trying to, sell the idea to. You right? I'm trying to sell the idea to somebody else. Interesting. Ow. Wow. Not to change the subject, but I have a sprained carpal tunnel wrist. I understand now what my karma is, why I got a sprained ankle. No sooner than I figured out how to heal it, like 2 days later, or 3 days later, I get this carpal tunnel sprained wrist. And I understand now the karma is the same in both instances. I have to force myself not to work whenever there's, under certain circumstances. When I'm forced to take rest, I don't want to. I want to keep working. I get all these ideas. You only get ideas sprouting out of the junction point between the absolute and the relative. And I don't want to go to the absolute. I want to stay in the relative, so stay at the junction point between the absolute and the relative, because that's where the muse is located, at the subtlest layer of creation, at the junction point between creation and God, between the absolute and the relative. Not respectively, because I just swapped terms there. The absolute being God, creation being the relative. But at the junction point between the two, that's where the muse is located. The muse of inspiration, the muse of new ideas. And so by keeping myself there, in a perennial state of self-amusement, I keep coming up with new ideas. And I say, wow, eureka, 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 But I don't transcend. I'm holding on to the relative. And for that karma of refusing to dive, I keep getting a sprained ankle or a sprained now wrist. So it'll heal. I'll heal my wrist, but how did I learn how to heal it? Oh yeah, I applied my circuit, but specifically across the ankle. I haven't been applying it across my arm, so now I'm going to do that. I'm going to apply it across my arm today, because I'm no longer using my sleep circuit during the daytime. I only use it at night, and my ankle is fine. But that's because I'm passing the electricity across my ankle, so my ankle is able to heal. But my arm is not healing, my wrist, so I have to pass it across my arm. I have to take the 2 electrodes of the circuit and attach it to either side of my arm, probably my, well, not my index finger, because I use it for typing. Yeah, I work on the computer all day. Probably to the back side of my hand. That's one side of my wrist, and then the other side will be probably between my elbow and my shoulder. I don't use that when I'm at the keyboard, but I use my whole forearm. It lies against my grounding mouse pad. So I could probably heal my wrist as I work by passing electricity through it. Exclusively, the entire sleep circuit of let's say 150 microvolts and 150 nanoamps across my wrist. That's doable, because let's see, I would need, well, I have an ankle band. Ooh. That's true, I have several. I have 4 ankle, no, I have more than that. I have several ankle wristbands, earthing wristbands. The question is whether or not I'll be able to fit one around my bicep. But if worse comes to worse, I can fit it between my thumb and the side of my hand on the palm, or across maybe 3 fingers or 4. Probably my 3 fingers, these 3 fingers, because I see when I type. See, I learned in piano class that your ring finger and your pinky are tied together, and it's impossible to separate them. It's very difficult. Pianists, I guess when they compose pieces for pianists, they never expect them to work their pinky and their ring finger separately too readily, but maybe it's possible. Maybe pianists develop the skill. In any case, she said it's very difficult because they're joined together with a muscle. So if I join those 3 fingers together with a wristband, it looks like it's, 3 fingers looks like it's roughly the same width as my wrist. I could put one wristband around 3 fingers right at the base, and the other one halfway up my forearm or at the wrist. See, the pain is right where my chin is, right on the top there, right on the wrist, carpal tunnel. Anyway, I'll figure out some way. I can use earthing patches. I've got a lot of earthing patches. I could just attach an earthing patch to the back side of my hand or to the palm, but the palm tends to be not very conductive, I think. So the back side of my hand would be more conductive. Actually, I don't think it makes a difference. I could put it to the inside of my palm. That might be smarter. I have to figure out which fingers the pain goes up. I think it's the outside fingers now that I think of it. So I think if I put the earthing patch to the back side of my hand, overlaying my two pinky and my ring fingers, because the pain is on the outside of my wrist, and then attach a patch to the outside of my wrist up a ways, up my forearm a ways on this side, I'd probably be hitting the nerve. It's probably a nerve. So I just have to locate the nerve and put the patches over the nerve on either side of where the pain is, and then pass the electricity through there. I bet I'll heal it within a matter of a few hours. But I have to pass the electricity directly across the area of pain. So this video is multi-part. It's all about healing sprained injuries with a sleep circuit, and how to convert Barbosa and Leal into a closed system instead of having it an open system, because that's what it amounts to. You know, substituting electrical components in place of the earth, you're making it a closed system basically, and yet still be an over-unity device, which shows, oh dear, you know what? We may not have Pancake coils in a simulator because they won't be able to list the Henrys. It's all about the Henrys, right? I tried out one simulator and you could plug in the Henrys on a coil of wire. Well, do we know what the Henrys are of a Pancake coil? I'll have to research this. I have to find out, because it didn't specify what kind of coil. I may be wrong, but it was a very simplistic simulator. You only got your chance at one kind of coil. For instance, there's another kind of coil, a capacitive coil, which is the opposite of a Pancake coil, in which instead of flattening the coil, you spread it out, such that you have a measured space between each turn of winding on the coil, creating increased capacitance between each turn. I mean, the capacitance is there as it is, but if you have magnetic wire, see, they're looking at zero capacitance, and all they're looking at is the Henrys, the inductance. All they're looking at is the inductance and not the capacitance between each turn of the wire, each winding. So I have to find a simulator that allows for the capacitance value to be plugged into a coil of wire, not just the inductance value. And then you could have yourself a Pancake coil. See, I figured this out. Gee, it's 6 years I've been spending on this, self-teaching myself electrical theory. I'm finally making headway. Yes! Teach yourself electricity. It's not that easy. 6 years at my age. Wind myself up. Ooh, now I gotta... Well, this terminates this, so I'm going to be able to put this on multiple channels, because this is multiple playlists, because this is a multi-topic, only 2 topics. I have another topic, but I'm not going to include that, because it's a very different topic. Yes, that I'm not sure I'm ready yet to tape a session. It's a little too close to my heart, but I don't know, one of these days maybe I'll make a tape on it. I certainly did a essay already, hint hint, on my Barbosa and Leal Earth Captor, Barbosa Leal Earth Captor.blogspot.com blog page. What did I call it? I don't know, I was being honest. It's a recent blog, around February 18th or 19th. Very short, very cryptic. Very terse, I mean. But it has more I could add to it, which maybe I'll add to it. Maybe I'll write it rather than speak it. It was easier, yeah. Because the thing about electrical theory is doesn't have to do with any personal pain, you know. It's just all the joy of discovery. So it's still joyous. So I can afford to talk about it. But the other one is a little bit more emotionally difficult, so it'd be easier for me to write that than it is for me to talk about it. So I think I'll just add to that essay, that blog. Now we call them blogs. We don't call them essays anymore. Because it's public. A public essay is a blog. Oh, okay. Now that's me. Public essays. It's a blog. Oh, I blog. Okay. No, it's just essays. My dissertate. Anywho. So I'll heal my wrist. Yeah, I'll attach the circuit to my arm. I'll be able to walk around the whole house. So I'll be able to have the circuit on all day long and all night if I want to sleep with it. That's right. I could do that. I could sleep with it this way. Cool. I used to put the circuit on my penis thinking it would help foreskin regeneration. Maybe it does, but it's so inconvenient I gave that up. But on my arm, I can see that. I can do that and heal myself of carpal tunnel. See, there is a way to heal ourselves of carpal tunnel. And that's with a teeny-weeny little sleep circuit, a voltage divider circuit, involving two resistors, a 10 mega-ohm resistor and a 1 kilo-ohm resistor. And the voltage difference between them, and you toss away the bigger of the two voltages, and you use the smaller of the two, the 1 kilo-ohm voltage portion, coming from a single AA battery. Or a single AAA battery is kind of similar. And that's it, and two electrodes. So in this case, I'm going to use earthing patches, because it'll be permanent. Well, I'll have to cover it with wound tape and a gauze dressing to protect it from the shower when I take a... Actually, I'll just keep my arm out of the bathtub when I take a bath. Yeah, I'll have to do that. Oh well. Or just replace the earthing patches. I still have a lot of earthing patches because I rarely ever use them. I reserve them only for wound care use. It's the only instance I ever use earthing patches. Because they're really a pain in the butt to deal with, you know. They hang halfway as they fall off. They pull on your body hairs if you don't shave the area before you put it on. It's a real pain in the butt. And then the silica gel semiconductor glob that's on the underside, that doesn't last forever either. You know, eventually that dries up. So it's like, you know, that's a pain in the butt, changing them especially. You got to change them. So they last maybe 4 days, and then you got to change them. Yeah, they last that long. I don't have any money at the moment, but I do have a lot of earthing patches, so I don't have to worry about running out of them, because they don't have to be changed every day. Unlike a silver dressing that Becker had to use in chapter 8. In chapter 8 of his book, The Body Electric, he had to change his dressing at least once a day, because you have to make sure the dressing is moist, so you have to salinate it with saline solution. And then you might as well put in a new silverized nylon cloth to go with your gauze dressing that you're going to change. Well, if you're bleeding with an open wound, of course you'd want to change the dressing. But if you're trying to heal something that's not an open wound, then you don't need a saline dressing. Although, now that I think of it, an earthing patch over a saline dressing would not be a bad idea. See, but you don't have to, because you got silicone glob, a silica gel glob. So you see, we've come a long way, Becker. We've developed techniques which don't require the use of silver, because I take a silver bath, so I don't need to put a silverized nylon dressing over a wound. I just take a silver bath and absorb it through my whole body to get silver into my body, and then apply electricity to the specific area that I'm trying to regenerate. So you see, this is a taped session. I got two different ideas in my mind that I'm willing to express, and the third one, which I'll just have to write. I can't remember the title of that blog. Oh, wait a minute. I Have a Conscience. That's what it's called. So you look for my blog at barbosalealearthcaptor.blogspot.com, and the title of the blog is I Have a Conscience, and I'm getting more ideas to flesh it out more. But it's not something I want to tape because it's very private stuff that's very emotionally upsetting, and so the only way for me to deal with it rationally is to write. But the circuit stuff and the Becker stuff, the silver and electricity stuff, that I can talk about, because the joy of learning electricity and healing and free energy devices hasn't been destroyed yet. Nobody's hurt me. We're going to hurt you and teach you a lesson that we don't approve of what you're doing. We're going to give you excruciating pain. That's so gothic. It's so Dark Ages. You know, I'm watching these pictures like A Man for All Seasons with Orson Welles, you know. Go look up A Man for All Seasons with Orson Welles. He doesn't play Thomas More, but some other English actor or American actor is playing Sir Thomas More, but Orson Welles is playing Bishop Wolsey, and he's a very interesting, rotund Orson Welles. Wow. He got pretty fat in his old age. I forgot when he was on the Merv Griffin show how rotund he was. Anyway, but he's in there, and he's being a bishop, and he's being a little ornery bishop, but although he's claiming Sir Thomas More is ornery, he's the ornery one. Sir Thomas More was the only one who had a conscience. So that inspired me to write that blog. So I'm getting more ideas to add to it. A Man for All Seasons. It's a very interesting movie. I've seen it before. This is the second time I've seen it. Never saw it in the theater, but I saw it on Netflix, and now I own the VHS tapes, so I get to see it whenever I want. Oh, and it's got a very young Jonathan Hurd, the English actor John Hurd. Yeah, Jonathan Hurd. Heard. I think he was in David Lynch's The Elephant Man. He played the Elephant Man under makeup, if I may recall correctly. I could be wrong. It might have been somebody else who was under the makeup of the Elephant Man, but I think it was Jonathan Hurd. Anyway, he's done a lot of movies. He's a very well-known character actor. I think he might have played lead roles a few times. I'm not sure, but I want to think that he has. Anyway, he's a superb, fine English actor. I want to think he's an English actor. I don't know why. Maybe he's American. I don't know. Anywho, I think he has a slight English accent. Noticeable. It's not strong. That's why I want to think he's... Oh, did he play with Ryan O'Neal back around 1984, I want to think? They drove around a little pink Volkswagen Beetle, the old kind of Beetle, the old bug, and they played two undercover cops posing as gay lovers, a gay couple. I think it was John Hurd who played with Ryan O'Neal, if I'm not mistaken. It's done as a comedy, but that movie was significant for me because I had to face the fact that I was cognizing the reality, the inner knowing that I'm the reincarnation of Judas Iscariot in the Anglo-Saxon version, Iscariot. Yes, Yiskadal Yiskadashamerba, you know. I can't do the rest from memory. I forgot the rest of it. But as if I ever knew. I think I did know at one time. The prayer for the dead in Hebrew. But yes, Iscariot is one of the many synonymous Hebraic terms for freedom fighter. And what's the other one? Ze'alotim. That's plural. That's a Hebrew term. Zealot in the English, in the Anglo-Saxon version. Zealot. Oh, he's such a zealot. He's so zealous. Well, zealot or zealotim is the Hebraic version. So we haven't anglicized Iscariot as a term. We simply pronounce it Iscariot. Judas Iscariot. But when I had to realize that, I had to accept it, and it was hard for me. It took 5 days of fighting. I kept fighting it, just like I'm fighting, relaxing when people come here to round. I have to get on the computer and work, or do some other work. And so now I'm getting karma. I'm getting injured ankle, and now an injured wrist that I have to heal. So maybe I'll learn my lesson and stop fighting. Maybe I'm such a stiff-necked obstinate. Maybe I should put the sleep circuit across my neck, because I have a neck injury there that dates back to 1987. I've never been able to heal. And this guy wanted, he's a masseuse, a chiropractic masseur. He wanted to dislocate my neck and allow it to snap back together again, and I didn't let him because I was too scared. And so he decided not to even be available for me anymore, because he needed me to be fearless. So if I put the circuit across my neck, it might work. There I've got an injury because I have sciatica from time to time acts up. Because of this, the muscle that goes down the back side of my neck remembers to tighten up. And I have to get it to forget to tighten and relax. And then maybe I won't be so obstinate. Dear me, I've got a number of injuries that I have to heal. I didn't even know I have to heal. Well, one I didn't even know I have to heal. That's right. So that's why I'm getting a sprained ankle and a sprained wrist. To teach me, I got a sprained neck that never fully healed, that failed to fully heal, that I have to heal. How about that? And then I'll be free of sciatica. And maybe I won't be so stiff-necked, psychologically speaking. See, there's always a psychological component to physical injuries, physical energies. Anyway, so this is a multi-part video. I could put it up on, multi-posted on all kinds of channels and playlists. Hey, and you'll just have to bear with me. If you get this far, you won't hear this statement if you signed off after the first 30 seconds. Oh shit, this is boring. I didn't want. What's he got it on this playlist for? This isn't about hygiene or whatever, or sprained wrists. Oh boy, or healing, regeneration. What's he talking about, Barbarossa and Leal? Who are they? Well, the patient ones will get this far, and now I'm ready to shut up because I'm done speaking. Okay.